All right, let's get into who should buy in trusts and companies. And again, consult your accountant first. I'm not a financial advisor, but this is just from personal experience. So please go consult one. The first one really is professionals and business owners. Now, the reason for this is mainly because generally you'll have a job where you might be earning a decent amount of money, but there might be a fair bit of risk exposure. So a good example of that would be a doctor, anaesthetist, maybe a lawyer. It might even be someone else, for example, it could even be someone in even the engineering and construction game, for example, who runs a business. Now, there can be a lot of risk exposure in that, and if something were to go wrong, someone could genuinely come after you. So that's a really good reason why you might do that. Families are another good example. So families, and it's mainly families because if you're looking longer term and looking to pass this on to future generations, trusts and companies can do that very easily. And it's also if they become quite, positive in the sense of making quite a bit of income, you can distribute income based on how you want to, especially if it's in a discretionary trust or a company, because it's technically its own entity that can pay out people from that. So you might, pay it to a child or something like that, or various other ways. High earning individuals. So again, I say this as well because if you earn a lot of money, you probably want to set it up in a way where if anyone ever comes after you again, you want it to be protected. So high earning individuals is probably another one of them. Very important in that way because, a lot of these you kind of guys, are those professionals and business owners? So that's another thing. Are those wanting to build portfolios? Now, the reason I say this is because accounting-wise and finance-wise, it's actually more a lending probably tool more than anything. So what I mean by that really is trusts and companies, you can have them to be self-servicing. So talk to a broker about this who's good if you know what I mean. Well, not if you know what I mean, but if you know what I'm talking about. An entity such as a trust or trading company can self-service. So you can retain borrowing power and not wipe debt, but wipe the view of debt against your name in the future, granted you have the right asset. So that's another thing you just might want to consider. Those wanting to build larger portfolios. It's probably, for me, I'd say professionals, business owners, high earning individuals, families, those wanting to build portfolios. If you sit in all of those categories, you better consider this. That's what I'm saying. So singles are another one. I say that now simply for asset protection purposes as well. Now, if most single people probably will have a partner at some point in their life. Now, if you set this up in, let's say, the right trust or something like that, it probably will, I'd say, protect you in a large sense. Now, I'm not saying it'll totally protect you completely. Now, that would be a complete lie because there are still things that can be brought up if someone comes after you. There are still costs associated if they do as well. But you'd rather protect the asset you work so hard for. So that's another thing for singles. And it's just also, it gives you, knowing that you're at least protected will probably give you a bit of a better mindset behind it as well. You don't want to be going around, thinking everyone's coming to get me, thinking that, if you're protected legally in the best way possible, and you're protected financially in the best way possible, you can live your life pretty happily and not think of kind of the worst case scenario in every circumstance. So that's probably another thing. Those wanting to minimize taxes. Now, I'm not saying this so, people hate me for it and say, oh, you don't pay tax. Big companies don't pay tax. But I think everyone needs to pay a level of tax. But I think we'd all agree that it's not really spent very well in this country. So, I'd probably, if you're legally doing a perfectly fine thing and you're looking to minimize it, should I say, I'd say also not even minimize it, it's probably the wrong word. I'd probably say best use the money that you have coming in and the actual assets you can purchase. Both trusts and companies can be a very good reason for that. So, I'm not trying to piss anyone off who loves tax or anything like that. I'm sure most people watching this channel don't, but all I'm saying is best use what you have and best use your assets to the best of their ability, and ideally use the money you have coming in on stuff that's going to best improve your life. So trust and trading companies in many circumstances can do that, and they're also an insurance policy for you in a large sense. So people take out car insurance where you're only protecting generally an asset that's like 30 to 50 grand, but for homes, they're usually like, 700,000 plus. In Australia, probably around 1 million on average these days, right? So what I say to a lot of people is, if they haven't spoken to an accountant or a commercial lawyer or anything like that, is, well, you have car insurance, don't you? And they always say, yes, I do have car insurance. And then they say, but I don't want to spend $3,500 or $4,000 setting this up. And I'm like, okay, so you're happy to spend, let's say, $1,500 to $2,000 or whatever it is on car insurance for a $30,000 asset, for example, right? But you're then not happy to spend $5,000 to protect literally probably 85% of your livelihood. And now people don't think of it that way, but that's how it should be viewed. So that's another thing I'll say. And that relates to all these points. The final one is self-managed super funds. Now, I didn't want to add this, but then I'm like, yeah, I do. It is what it is. So, self-managed super funds really is, people who are buying, obviously on behalf of the self-managed super fund, you basically do create a bare trust and a company, and basically that's what you do. You have a trust and a company for a self-managed super fund. So if you're buying a self-managed super fund, you have to set this up anyway. So I'm adding it to this because people who are looking to do that won't know that. So that's basically how this kind of works. So those are basically the people who should be buying in trusts/companies. Now, I'm going to get into a few different things, and I'll explain why these are good assets for different purposes. So the best assets to buy in trusts really are a couple of things. So the first one is blue chip properties. Now, the reason blue chip properties are important to buy, I should actually say trusts and companies to this slide. It's not only trusts. The reason why blue chip properties are good to buy in this structure is because generally you have higher working professionals living here. They're generally worth a lot more money. Hence, the risk exposure to you, if you don't have that, is significantly higher. So that's the reason why these are good to buy in. These are good to buy in trusts and companies. That's the first one. The second one is dual income properties. Now, dual income properties is because the reason being is because it's particularly for a servicing aspect. The reason for that is because, as I said, banks and certain financial institutions or lenders can see them as different entities. So because they can see them as different entities, what you can have there is, very simply speaking, it is very, as I said, very simply speaking, them self-servicing in the future, them basically limiting the debt or wiping it against your name, and you retaining a similar borrowing capacity to before. Granted, interest rates haven't changed. So that's the reason. It's mainly a servicing and financial structure purposes. So that's the biggest thing behind this. Thirdly is property development properties. So if you want to do a development in the future, it comes with a significant risk. I recently spoke to a very good accountant I know. He actually is an international accountant as well, and he actually is he actually speaks on behalf of the Building and Construction Society of Australian Code of Australia, to give you an idea. So he's very well versed, should I say, in that. There is inherent risks with this. The bigger the development, generally the higher the risk. And also, if you don't know the builder and you're hiring someone off the street that you don't know personally, there is a lot of risk with that. So that's the reason you do it. It'd be to diversify, and ideally, not diversify, sorry, it'd be to limit risk on what you're doing. Multiple party properties. So there's plenty of people these days, due to the course of how expensive things are, where you do get quite a few people that get, have to join forces to get in the market. Now, that's a fine thing. I'm not having a crack at people like that. But the reason it's important is because you want to have either a constitution or something similar, a trust deed possibly, to actually have this set up right in case anything goes wrong. So I would not buy with a friend. It's probably different if you're buying with your partner and you've got kids, because that's probably fine. But if you're buying with a friend or a relative or someone else, that's the breeding ground of something going wrong, to give you an idea. So that's definitely one. Unit blocks. That you'd probably add that under dual income properties. This is probably multi-income properties I'm talking about here. Unit blocks are very much so an asset where, if you have, multiple parties going to own it, or not only multiple parties, but multiple parties even leasing it, which you always do on unit blocks, there is more risk. So you probably want to limit that risk by having it in a trading company or trust. And also, not only that too, it's probably going to be self-servicing over time as well. So it's probably a finance perspective as well. To add to that, cash flow focused properties, you can probably add the unit blocks, dual income properties to that. Some are even single front dwelling cash flow focused properties. It might even be one you flipped and turned cash flow neutral. It might turn cash flow positive in 3 to 5 years. Most do in good locations, or even 3 to 10 if it's a very expensive area, but they do. These properties, again, it's probably more servicing based reason for that, to keep your borrowing power, should I say, fairly intact, and also not only that, to actually structure it for a method of protection. So those are all good reasons why these are your best asset types to purchase in trusts. I'm actually going to do a little addition to this, and I'm actually going to say the regions you should purchase in trusts and trading companies. The reason I want to say this is simply because these areas are by far your best areas to purchase, and the areas I purchase in alone. So in no particular order: Melbourne, Sydney, Newcastle, Geelong, Central Coast, Wollongong, Brisbane are all your best locations to purchase these assets in. And the reasons for this is because they are predominantly areas that perform well, predominantly the areas where you can get all of these things I'm talking about done very well, and predominantly the regions that will do well long term and actually change your financial future. Secondary locations are probably the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Hobart and Perth. I know people might say Adelaide and Darwin. I don't purchase in these locations, so don't even think about it if you're going to talk to me about it, because I just don't purchase in these locations.